my name's Christine, aka Crafty Potential, and I'm on the design team for Arden Creative Studios. And in today's video, I thought we'd do another one of those collage-y kind of style cards that I did previously in another video that a lot of you enjoyed. And we're going to be using the Vintage Makers collection for this one. So hang around to see what we end up creating. So for today's video, I thought I would go through the Vintage Makers collection and pick out my favourite bits that I want to use, rather than just using the scraps of papers that I had left over. I think that's what I did last time. So I thought I would actually go through and pick out a few of my favourite bits and pieces, because I find when you're trying to do these kind of layered up collage-y styles, it's a bit daunting seeing full sheets of papers, a full roll of PET tape, a full pack of ephemera and things in front of you. You kind of don't know where to start. So I feel like if you just bring out a few bits and pieces, I think it's going to make the process easier. So we're going to see today if it does make it nice and quick and easy to do. So first of all, I went through the 6x8 paper pad, and the first paper I picked out was this one because it's already got kind of like a collage style to it. I'm not sure which section I'm going to pick from this yet, whether I'm going to go for one of the collage-y sections or whether I'm going to go for this bit so it kind of already frames in the card. I haven't decided, but I pulled out the full sheet so that we can play around with that. And on the back of this one, we've got this beautiful piece, so whatever scraps we end up from however we cut into this piece, this is going to be really nice for layering some elements on anyway. Then I've also, oh no, that was a previous card I'd nicked that piece for. I've nicked like the bottom section of some of these, so I've stolen a piece from this because I really liked that bold topography kind of style. I have sacrificed a little bit of that pretty element, but I do still have the other sheets, so I can still use those parts. I've picked out a word, yeah, just one word from this as well, and I also picked out one of the words from here too, plus one of the tags, because I thought that would be nice to have a tag ready, and then we'll feel like we can add it into our layered up kind of elements. And then there was one more sheet, this one here. I really liked this damask kind of pattern, or the back of this is really nice and grungy and perfect for layering up as well, so whichever side we decide works better. I thought that's a nice place to start. Then I have also just had a quick look through the vellum ephemera pack, and I found this piece in there. I have actually gone round and trimmed off the white edges because I thought it would kind of blend in better to a collage if it didn't have the white edges of the vellum. So you'll feel free to do that with any of your die cut ephemera pieces. You can easily trim off the white borders or make them smaller, whatever you want to do. So I thought I would just pick that one piece out for now. We may go back and nick something else out of there. And then I've also got off to the side the laser cuts, because these are fantastic for any collaging kind of style, because they're just beautiful bits and pieces that you can instantly pop out and add on. So we'll probably be using a couple of these. I have also brought out the 2 stencils from the collection as well, or 2 of the stencils, because we could do a little bit of stenciling before we actually stick things down and maybe add in an extra pattern or 2. And I've also brought in 2 of the stamp sets from the Vintage Makers collection as well. The Maker Sentiment clusters and the Maker's Marks, in case we want to add a tiny bit of stamping in too. So I'm not sure where we're going with this, but I thought you enjoyed seeing the process before when I did one of these collage cards, so maybe you'd like to see it again for a different card style. So let's see where we're going to start with some of these bits and pieces. You can see all of them here that I've picked out. I did, I decided to do this for the sentiment. So it says create more and then love more as a sentiment. I thought that would be quite a nice one for a crafty friend as well, maybe. I've got that vellum piece, as I said. I've got these 2 strips of paper, which I just cut off the pages and left them in the pad so they weren't sort of loose around. But I could use either side of either of these really. They'll work really nicely as elements, but having small pieces makes it so much easier to layer up because you don't feel like you're cutting into a sheet. I know I originally cut into the sheet to get these pieces, but it kind of is less daunting just to have smaller pieces on your desk. So we've got those, we've got the full sheet of paper, and I also just cut off 3 sections of the PET tape because I thought, again, having the whole roll sitting there is kind of like oh, I don't know if I, you know, need to use that or anything, but having a few pieces, and this could be scraps, leftovers from maybe when you cut off a piece and didn't use all of it or something, and I want to maybe tear into it and layer these bits behind other elements. So we'll see how that goes as well, but that's my kind of theory behind that. So we need to start by picking which section of this patterned paper we want to use for our background. Now, I really love this part with the ledger, so I don't know if I'm going to just maybe take out that part of the paper. My initial thought was to go straight for that box piece, but maybe that's too plain, unless we want it to be plain. Maybe we do want it to be plain. So usually if I'm trying to eyeball a piece that I want to take out of a patterned paper, I'll bring in my paper trimmer, because I actually have marked on it the short and long side of my favourite sized rectangle, so I can just butt things up against it and decide, you know, the kind of height before I cut anything. So I can place this underneath and see if I did cut this to my favourite size, this rectangle would fit perfectly on it. So I think I'm going to go for that. I'm going to go for the rectangle. So I'm going to snip it there, and then I'm going to line that up against my other short notch. It's almost like the perfect size other than that little piece coming in, but that gives us the first part of our collage as well, which is nice. You've already got one layer initially on there. So now I'm thinking of just tearing some of these pieces, and then we could sort of bring them in from the sides. I mean, we could have a strip that goes all of the way down, perhaps. I quite like the idea of that. This one kind of, you'd feel like it needs to go more in this direction, but it doesn't have to. Even though the writing is going in that direction, we could have it going vertically down the card as well. Or we could bring in some of these pieces here that we've got left over from the main piece of paper as well. Maybe we don't want a whole strip. Maybe if we don't have it going all of the way up the card, it might make us you know, be a bit more loose with our layering. So I think maybe we're going to do that. This is the other side of this paper, so let's just tear into this. And yeah, that's a bit plain on the other side, so I think tear a element like this and maybe layer the two of those up together. We've also got this gorgeous tag in here as well, which maybe layering behind would be nice for that. None of this is permanent at the moment as well. We're just placing things to see what we think will go nicely in different areas. And then we also have the leftover scraps as well, which we could layer up in a different direction if we want to. So you could even bring those in going in the opposite way. But I think, yeah, you see this would look really nice poking out from behind that layer, so we might do that a bit later on. And then I want my kind of focal point to be create more and love more, maybe tucking them underneath each other. I've got that beautiful piece of vellum ephemera as well that I want to add in. I might chop the roots off and just have the leaves coming out. And then let's have a look through the laser cuts and see what we've got in here to add on. Because actually I've kind of got my eye on that beautiful flower up there. I saw it on the packaging when I was talking about the laser cuts earlier. So I feel like this would work really nicely as a kind of botanical focal element. So delicate. That does look really nice. Yeah, I think having that tucked in there would look lovely. We won't have those roots showing, so they will be out of the way. But we've got that sort of going like this. Maybe we could go along with this circle theme, because there's two of these that have just fallen out that must have been in the centre of a frame that I've already used. So maybe we could have the butterfly circle there, and possibly this fern circle like behind the flowers. I like that. That's sort of given a nice triangular element as well with those circle elements. Then what else have we got in here? This leaf. I like this colour. It's very similar to that vellum ephemera. So I think I might pull that out as well. And which way do we want it to go? I think that way actually. And maybe even have it behind part of this flower, just to add in another layered portion. So we've got those. Then, oh, we've got a moth just fell out. Maybe we could have a moth. No, it's a bit big for the layout that I'm going for. What else do we have in here? There's so many lovely sort of layering elements. I think I'd taken that out for a previous card and didn't end up using it. We've got these like tiny little word kind of pieces that are sort of more numbers. They almost look like tiny little washi tape bits. That would be nice as part of the layered design. We've also, because we've got this rectangle in the background, I think it was that previous collage design we did together that I just used one photo corner. So we could also go with that idea again with one photo corner. I'm going to add a third sentiment just to be a little bit different, and because to go along with this like cluster feel, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do create more, love more, follow your path. I really like that as a sentiment. Okay, I think I'm happy with all of the elements now. Can kind of see this coming together. So let's put these laser cuts away. And at this point, I'm going to take a photo. So I've got a quick photo on my phone just to refer back to, because I quite like this layout, but I want to add some other elements on as well. I think it needs stenciling and stamping I'm going to go for. And we're going to go subtle with it as well. So we've got these bits left over to the side. We might want these later. So I'm just going to put those off to the side so I don't lose them. But I want the stenciling and stamping to be right in the background, I think. Just to kind of add something extra. And I might even want to ink around the edge of this tag and possibly this corner too, just to make them stand out a little bit more. So if I move everything else off to the side and leave these three elements, I want this stencil. This is the Distressed Diamonds stencil, and I want to go really subtle with it, and I want to bring in a colour that will go really nicely. So if I bring out my brown inks, I think brushed corduroy or maybe frayed burlap would go nicely as well. So I might use a mixture of those two for the ink blending and the stamping. So let's just get a neutrally kind of blending brush, and I think go for the frayed burlap to begin with. And I'm just going to do a little bit of ink blending through the stencil in a few different areas. I'm looking back at the photo on my phone, it's in front of me, so I can kind of see where I hadn't put any of the ephemera and pieces, and so I can target those areas. You can definitely go all over if you'd rather, but if you want to sort of minimise your time spent, and if you've already laid out everything that you want to go on top, you can actually be more strategic with where you do your ink blending so that you know it's going to be visible. So I'm thinking about like that with the frayed burlap. There we go, just a little bit of extra detail in the background. I think that's going to make all of the difference. And then I think a little bit of this stamping, but do we go bolder or subtler? I think subtle. Do any of these go really nicely with the sentiments that I've chosen? I think this one actually, keep chasing your dreams, live life to the fullest, create the life of your dreams, chase those dreams, achieve your dreams. I like that one. Okay, we're going to go with that one. And I'm also going to go with one of these sort of really random ones with all of like ampersands and forward slashes and dots and things in it. Just to go with that kind of scattered, clustered kind of effect. So let's do the writing in the frayed burlap. Now we don't often stamp in distress inks because they don't stamp very crisply, but if you're just adding a little bit of kind of almost just texture in the background, they're fine for doing that kind of stamping. So I'm just going to do a couple of impressions of this. Again, in more of the areas that I know that I can see some of it on the background once everything else is layered on. So I think that'll be enough. And then I'm going to go brushed corduroy with these little marks because, you know, they're smaller, so we can go with a darker coloured ink on here. Oh yeah, that looks really nice. Just an extra tiny little element that kind of brings everything together. And I think another little bit down here. Maybe a bit more coming out to the side there. And a little bit over there as well. Okay, so we've got our stamping and our stenciling done, but I want to do a little bit of ink blending around these two elements. So I'm going to go back to the brushed corduroy and just ink the edges of this tag that came out of the paper pad. Just so it helps it just pop out a little bit more from the background. Yeah, that looks much better comparing it to the photograph. And then also on this little tiny photo corner as well. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that looks really good like that. Okay, so now we want to think about layering in some of this PET tape with the beautiful film strip design. So I know that that is going to go there, but I'm thinking down this edge here where those papers are going to layer up. The floral design that we're putting over here is kind of dark with the dark green leaves, so I think a bit of this torn down the edge there, I think that'll work really nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel the corner up of this and I'm going to see if I can just tear it. No, I can't quite tear it, so I'm going to snip into it to start off a tear. And then I'm going to tear this down. Don't throw this away, you can definitely use this for another project. And then I think I want a torn top edge as well, so I'm just going to, actually I'm going to go from this side, snip in there and then create a tear going down there. And then I think, the good thing is we've got this straight line here, so we can make this perfectly straight on our design as well. But I think about there is going to work nicely. And then you can either fold the rest of this over or you can trim it off, because you might want to use this somewhere else on the card once we've layered everything else up. We may feel like it needs a little bit of it down here perhaps or something, so I'm going to put those two little pieces back on the carrier sheet for the PET tape for now. And then let's start with all of our layering up for all of our elements. So in the background is this tag, actually, that's in the very background, and we can also put that photo corner on now as well. So let's get some glue and add that to that photo corner, like so. I think I want to add a little bit of low profile 3D foam behind the top of that tag, just to make it stand a little bit proud. So I'm going to put that on there, and then I'm just going to use glue. You can definitely use tape as well, but we'll use glue for speed. And place that on. Then, looking at the photo, and also looking at this cluster that I just moved off to the side, the next behindy element is this piece of paper here. So we can bring that in now, and you can see how that film strip just pokes out from behind it. I think that looks really nice. I'm going to bring it down to about there, and then add our glue onto it. And I think that kind of position works well. And then the next piece down is going to be the other piece of paper. And this was coming in a bit further down, like so. So we can place that about here. Then, so we can sort of visually see where everything is, I recommend flipping it over and just trimming off these two pieces here. And you can definitely use these as extra elements to tuck back into places whilst we're collaging this design as well. So those two pieces, we might use them. Then I think the next couple of things, I do want to trim off some of these little pips on them, so I'll just quickly do that. So I think the next thing that goes in the sort of order is going to be our beautiful vellum ephemera, and I am going to just tear off the root ball of that. But I'm going to keep that because you never know when you might want to add that into something. So I will keep that, but I think this is going to look better without that poking out the bottom of our design. And with vellum, it's obviously difficult to adhere it down without you seeing the adhesive. But because we've got our photograph that we're referring back to, I know that there are elements going just here. So I'm going to put my glue in those places. So we know that that glue is not going to be seen on the finished card, and it means we can hold this into position really nicely. Or you can also use like the Tim Holtz tiny attacher and put little staples in it so that they're not very visible, or that they become part of the design as well. So we've got this now. Then one of the next pieces in the sort of layering up system is over here, which is going to go behind the head of one of the flowers. So I'm going to stick that into place. Then, just looking at what is next, I think maybe these leaves are probably next. Adding them in around here. I think they go about there, and then it'll be the, well, these are actually kind of tucking in between each other actually, they're sort of nestled. So, if we're going to nestle those together, let's get them in the perfect position first. And then this leaf of the flower is overlapping the other leaves, so let's just put a little piece of 3D foam on the back of that leaf and then adhere those together. Then that's going to keep those in place. And then I'm going to flip this over and add a little bit more 3D foam as well, just so that it's raised up a little bit from the background of the card to give a little bit of depth in our little collage. Just doing it on a few different areas. You don't have to do it everywhere. We can just add glue to the other areas. Okay, so a bit of glue on these areas. Bring our card back in and then add this into position. So I think about there looks good. So we can press that into place. Then I think the next part is probably to get the sentiment in position so that we can sort of work around it with other bits and pieces. And on my original I did actually have this sentiment tucked under that leaf. So we could do that again. I think that was just by accident, but I quite like how that looks. So I think that works nicely. Let's just do a little bit of foam tape under the word more, just to hold that down, and then we can tuck under other bits and pieces, because I want this love more to go under like that. So I'm going to use a little bit of 3D foam on the back of that and just tuck that under the words there. And then just double check before I press that down that I've got enough room to put the follow your path on. Yeah, I might move it over a tiny bit more. There we go. And then we can do follow your path. And I'm going to use a slightly higher profile foam tape for that one, just so it stands up a little bit more. So just put that into position. Then we've just got a few other elements really. It's this little tiny ticket here, which I think will look really nice just there. So a little bit of 3D foam behind that. And I think just tucking that in there. And then we've also got that beautiful butterfly, and I think the higher profile foam tape on that. And then we can just see what else we want to tuck in. If we've got these bits and pieces left over, we might as well use them to add into our clustered design. So, can we fit these little bits of film strip anywhere? Are they going to look nice poking out from underneath something to kind of go along with this edge here? Maybe this piece. We could possibly have it hanging out here. I do quite like this bit, and because it's got that little bit of aging on there as well. Ooh, that looks nice. I like that, coming out from the edge. Oh, that looks really nice. Okay, there we go. That's solved that problem. That's going to tuck just under there, and we're going to stick that into place. And that is such a small piece there. I will just fold that round on this occasion. I like that. That works really nicely. Okay, then we have these scraps left over from before as well. We've got a few little pieces here, and we've got those little ones that we cut off earlier as well. Do we feel like we need to do any more layering? Do we need to tuck another piece coming out from underneath anywhere? We could have a little piece coming in from there. That looks quite nice. Just as an extra. Yeah, I like that. So a little bit of glue on the back of there. Tuck that under, and we've got that lovely torn edge. And we can maybe do the same with a little piece of this too. Maybe having that coming out from underneath as well. Maybe that's too much. Yeah, I think that's too much. Right, what do these smaller words say on here? Better together, that says. You can do anything. Oh no, I can do anything. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to snip into this. I don't know if you can read these words. It says together just there, kind of hiding in there. And there was another word I just saw that I was going to use, anything, as well. I think those two words would go nicely on this card. So I'm just going to snip around those. And even if they're not 100% legible, I think they'll just look nice tucked into this. Maybe go with a third word. What else could we do? It also says yourself in here. Let's do that one. Okay. So we're just going to have these three little words that are hardly legible, but just tucking them in to different areas. I think will look really nice just behind that flower coming out. Maybe yeah, I think just like that. Just something a little bit different to tuck in that you may not have thought of doing, but I mean, even if it's not that specific patterned paper, there's probably other ones in the collections that have some kind of wording in that you could snip into and add into a collage-y design like this. Okay, so I think I don't think that this needs anything else to it. I think that is really nice as it is, although I might put a bit of twine through that tag. Let me just get a piece of twine. Oops, I just got a little bit of twine here. Just going to cut a piece off and just put the loop through the front of this tag. And because we adhered it down with foam tape, it's really easy to get underneath there. And then we can just loop that through and pull that up. Yeah, that just finishes it off really nicely. Okay, so all that's left to do is add that to a card blank. And there we have our finished collage style designed card using the Vintage Makers collection from Arden Creative Studios and Katie Petite as well. So hope you enjoyed this kind of creating a card together as we go through the video, bringing all the bits and pieces in and showing you how you can tear things up and snip things out and do all sorts to create your own clustered, collaged kind of style card like this. So really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!